What is going on with Canoo, and why does this increasingly feel like a company that's a little bit rudderless? They seem to be all over the place, and I'm fascinated by them, but today, let me kind of give you an update on where I am, what I'm thinking, and some of the recent good and bad news from them. All right, welcome back to All Cars, y'all. I'm John, and if you've been on this channel before, you know I've done a few different updates on Canoo, and I'm really fascinated with this company. And don't misunderstand anything I say here. I want this company to succeed. I think they've got some really cool products, but increasingly, I'm convinced they're selling vaporware. I hope they meet their objectives and they manage to figure out a way to survive. But looking at their last financial releases, including all of 2021, it's hard to see how they continue going forward as a concern, and even their projections of building products does not sustain the level of spending they've got going on. So I really want to believe in this company and their lifestyle vehicles. I particularly like the truck. I like some of their approach, but just increasingly, every time they take a step forward, it seems like they take a step back as well. So I'm going to kind of give you a brief update of where we are today, rehash some things I've already talked about in previous updates, and then kind of tell you what I've been looking at here recently. Now, this company actually was founded in 2017. A couple of employees from Faraday, I think it was Faraday Futures, left and started Canoo. It's called something else to begin with, and they've kind of been all over the place. But in 5 years, I'm recording this at the end of March 2022. That's important. In 5 years, they don't have a car, right? Now, they've got some prototypes. They've got a gamma level prototypes is what they're calling it. They're hand assembling some chassis and battery packs and everything else to test, but they're not really near production. Now, they originally started wanting to do a kind of a ride share service that you would subscribe to. They formed a partnership with Apple on a top secret project. Eventually, they merged with a special purpose entity, took them on the NASDAQ. And I've heard different views here, heard different numbers, but it seems that they walked away from all that with about $900 million in the bank. Well, their partnership with Apple fell apart. They changed their business plan from that ride share subscription service to selling their vehicles. Their CEO left, as well as at some point their CFO and their chief technology officer all left. And that was just the start of it, honestly. Now, their new CEO, Tony, I like him. He seems like a pretty steady hand on the tiller, as it were. But the news keeps getting mixed. He seems a little reassuring in terms of where things are going, but what I found is when I dug into the numbers a little bit, I don't see how they continue through 2022. I guess that's what future news will tell us. Back at the end of 2021, like many EV manufacturers, they had a fire. Now, they were based in Torrance, California, but they had a fire. Now, this didn't really catch on in the news, and the reason is because it was not a vehicle that caught fire. They were stress testing batteries. It passed the test, but it was improperly sealed up afterwards and caught fire. It hit the news, though. I saw it, but it never really caught on. But if you follow the history of EV manufacturers and you think about Fisker and what they went through, that kind of catches your attention. Now, they announced that they were going to be building a plant in Oklahoma, and they released some cool renderings of it, and they're now under construction. They got a bunch of money and incentives from Oklahoma, and then later announced that they were building a second factory in Arkansas. Now, I covered that in my last update because it's in Bentonville, which is the home of Walmart, and I continue to think there's something there. There's some news to drop, is what I'm expecting. But more interestingly is they just relatively recently, I think it was the beginning of this month, announced that they were getting a third space, that they had signed a 10-year lease on a about 271,000 square foot space And this is where they're going to set up and test the manufacturing before they do it full scale in one of their factories. More bad news came along the way. They lost 3 executives. A longtime employee who was in the design side, the head of powertrain and battery manufacturing engineering, and the guy who led their software controls. Now, this is pretty big because that manufacturing engineering one, isn't he the guy that would get the factories started? No real description. But more executives leaving, not good news. Now, what has this meant for the stock price? Well, this is not a financial channel. The fact is it's trading about half what it was when it was first came out. And I've read several different reports, all of which are very bearish on this and expect it to probably drop another 50%, something like that. But the concern becomes they're building one factory. They decided to build another factory. They leased some more space. In the past, they had a engineering agreement with Hyundai, which they canceled. So this company has no source of income right now. But they're still losing people after a huge hiring spree. They're still struggling to get their cars out. Hopefully they're on track. They did raise their expected production for the first year. So for 2022, they're expecting to build between 3,000 and 6,000 vehicles. Another spot of good news for them has been their reservations on their vehicles are up about 60%. So they have about 15,000 reservations on their vehicles. That's fantastic. But that's only $100 fully refundable deposit. That's people basically throwing up their hand and saying, yeah, I'm kind of curious. I almost did it myself. But they don't have a factory. They just lease the space to practice setting up the factory. And they only expect to build between 3,000 and 6,000 cars this year. Of course, they had a agreement with Nedcar over in the Netherlands. They were going to produce their cars for them to get things up and running a little faster, but timing seems to have worked out. They think they can get their factory online. But it doesn't take a genius to think that if you're starting a company, 3,000 to 6,000 cars is not enough. Now, their forecast is for 2023 to do 14,000 to 17,000. That's a little more reasonable, but still, once you dig into the numbers, that's not enough, and it's not enough by a long shot. So if you go back into their 2021 financials, you find a couple of really interesting things. Let me pull them up here real quick. The first is that in the 3 months, the last quarter of 2021, they burned through $138 million. Now, this is financial, so depending on how you slice everything up, this number can vary quite a bit, but I've read 180, I've read 138. I like the 138 number. But that means for all of 2021, they burned through 346, basically $347 million. Now, more importantly, their own financial reports shows that they have cash on hand of $225 million. Let's recap. They have 225, they're spending 138 per quarter, and they've not staffed up manufacturing to start building things. That's where I started to get really nervous and decided to do this update, because what the heck? It's very obvious that at this rate, and certainly if they're going to start hiring employees and training them to build the cars, the vehicles, right, the trucks, the lifestyle vehicle or the delivery vehicles, that's going to go up. But let's say that they manage to do it and they sell 5,000 vehicles this year, all right, 2022. We'll whip out the old calculator. 5,000. And I don't know what the profit margin will be on one of these things. It's $30-some-odd thousand vehicle. Let's say 15,000. I think that's really, really high. I don't know. If you know, let me know. But that's $75 million a year, this year, and they are spending last year $350 million. Doesn't take a math genius to figure this out. Now, they have had other spots of good news. Both Oklahoma and Arkansas have both placed purchase orders for 1,000 units each. They've got, up to, let's say, 15,000 pre-orders they can start working on. So they've got a little bit of backlog. And I think possibly that second year projection of 14 to 17,000, something like that, is reasonable or even a little low. But if they build 15,000 in 2023, they're only going to bring in $225 million at the rate they're spending. Some of that will change once the manufacturing construction is done, but it'll convert and it'll be the staff on hand and all of those benefits. I think it's obvious to anyone that they need to get their products working. They need to start building them. But more importantly, we're at the end of the first quarter of 2022. I'm really interested in what their financials are going to show for this quarter, because at a burn rate of 130 something and cash on hand of 225, they're going to have to come up with more money. How are they going to do that? Are they going to go out and have another stock offering? Try to raise money that way? That's only going to dilute what everybody else is out there. Or is there another company that's going to come in and invest a bunch of money? I don't know. But what I know is that if I was an investor, or if I was interested in putting a reservation on one of these cars, increasingly the financial situation and the constant little string of bad news to offset anything good that happens, I don't see how they're really viable moving forward without a major cash injection. I'm going to be keeping an eye on this, and it's not because I'm your single news source. It's because I'm just really interested in this company, and I want to see them succeed. I want to see them start selling vehicles. I want to see one in the parking lot of the Harris Teeter down the road. But gosh, from the outside looking in, it looks like they're in a race against time, how fast they're spending money to get something on the road. But what shocks me is once they get things on the road, it doesn't look like they still have enough sales lined up or production capability to even pay their bills. Let me know what you think below, guys.